personal searches and things that we know that are going on in our own community that are probably making Fayetteville more resilient. And grit is a word actually that is commonly used in resilience circles, especially in the social sciences. Like, how much grit does a person have? That means they're tough, you know? And so I just thought that would be a fun acronym. And so it's Growing Resilient Initiatives Together. So join grit.
How many people do you have?
Oh, we've got a little over 100, I think. You can see that I screenshotted this last night, and Aubrey was the last person who put something on grit. I put something on there this morning that I discovered. So anyway, 108 last night. So let's get it up. Let's improve it. Thank you. So let me just tell you a little bit more about PREP, Partnerships for Resilience and Empowered Planning. We've got communities. I'm not going to list through the 10 communities, but there's 10 of us. We've got some of that are on the coast. We're working with Asheville, North Carolina, Charlotte, Miami, Orlando, Atlanta, Knoxville, Nashville, Fayetteville. Huntsville. We don't have anyone in the southeast from Mississippi or Louisiana, unfortunately, and that's just it's because this grant was funded through the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, and they're not members. There's no one in Louisiana or Mississippi that are a part of that network of sustainability directors, and it was the USDN that funded this regional group, which is just a subsidiary really of USDN, which is the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network, SSDN. So the USDN is divided up into 8 regions nationally, and they had 2 grants that they were willing to give out to 2 of those regions to start working on some kind of initiative to educate communities about resilience. And so we put together this program that was basically focused on educating the sustainability directors so that they feel they have the self-efficacy and confidence to begin embarking on spearheading community resilience planning in their communities, respectively. So the components are, we have monthly webinars, and one of my roles is to find speakers for the webinars. And so we've had speakers from NOAA, and we've had a speaker, the sustainability director from Baltimore is really amazing woman. Baltimore is just doing incredible things relative to, they're well on their way to having an amazing resilience plan for their city.
They started a long time ago, huh?
Yeah, I think they started 2 or 3 years ago, and so they're definitely leaders. They have a mascot for their community resilience plan. That really impressed me. It's like a turtle, and this turtle goes out into the schools and teaches the parents and the children about community resilience and about climate change, and it's really cool stuff. I mean, they're really bringing the community. There's that stakeholder and engagement with the community. They're doing a lot of that. So it was neat to have them as a speaker. We had a couple of people from Joplin as speakers, and their perspective was more, you know, they didn't really have a lot of resilience planning before they didn't have any resilience planning before the tornado hit. But since then, from a social science perspective, a couple of things that they did that were innovative, they had a really strong school network of community leaders who were really focused on improving high school retention rates and graduation rates of high school students. And so they used that network to build back Joplin, basically, after the tornado. So they recognized that there was a socially cohesive network there, and they used that network to educate and communicate. And what they did is they learned they had a leader in the community who had a lot of experience with Katrina and had been in New Orleans and had worked with the community there. And one of the biggest problems that the community faced and community leaders faced was that a lot of people left New Orleans, you know, and never went back. And Joplin did not want that to happen. They didn't want people to leave and never come back. And so they really pulled the community together and really, really worked on building social cohesion and capitalizing on the social cohesion that was already there. And one of the things they did is they went and they put out signs everywhere that were about basically community pride and like, we can do this and we can pull together and we can build back Joplin and this is how we're going to do it, you know. And so they kind of rallied the troops and they tried to motivate people to stay. And they encouraged, so, and they, by all rights and purposes, they probably made a pretty big difference because only 1% of the Joplin population has left and not come back. And, you know, Katrina, New Orleans, it's over 20. So, the other things that we do, we have these 2 hands-on, face-to-face workshops. And we're working with NEMAC to develop an online tool where the sustainability directors can go and just kind of have like a one-stop shop for information about resilience planning, even just like links to other organizations, you know, and what the Obama administration is doing. So they're not out there just trying to search on their own. And they've put together, NEMAC has done this part, like a place where the communities can share their own personal case studies with each other, because a lot of the communities in PrEP have already done some pretty significant resilience work and have, you know, I mean, Nashville, oh my gosh, I mean, they had to deal with a pretty serious flood. And so they already have overcome barriers and learned from what they faced. So it's a place for them to share case studies with each other and to learn from one another. And at the end, of course, like any good grant cycle, we will assess, you know, the satisfaction of the participants and what their knowledge base was before they started, and if they feel like it's improved at all. Because one of the interesting things that I've learned is that it's the sustainability directors in the communities that are really being looked to spearhead these resilience plans in the communities, if there's any understanding at all in the community that such a thing is needed. And then in other communities, some of the ones that are in PrEP, it's like they're the only one with any consciousness in their town that there needs to be a resilience plan. And so people are at these different places with their community, with their government leadership, and with the community leaders. You know, some of them are just like, how do I even start this conversation? And that's their big struggle. You know, how can I lead this? You know, because there's election cycles, and you know, we have a mayor, and you know, how can we turn this into something popular? You know, and then that's a thought. Yeah, right. That's where the power is. Oh, this is one of the ones that I wanted to show you. I'm not going to click on this just for the sake of time so that we can get into our brainstorming, but this is just another one of those. Oh, I wanted you to know that one of the initiatives coming out of the administration is this Resilience Task Force. And it brings tribal leaders and community leaders and climate leaders together to brainstorm and come up with ways to help local communities. And this email, this outreach at ceq.eop.gov, I'll give you time to write that down. You can email this email, and you can be put on the list so that you will be, if you want to, you can be kept apprised of what's going on with the task force.
Repeat the email address.
Okay. It's outreach at ceq.eop.gov.
Outreach at ceq.
ceq.eop.gov.
Thank you.
So you just write in and ask to be informed about ongoing
Investigations,
Yeah, you just write them and let them know that you want to be added to the listserv,
okay.
so that you're, kept up to date on what the task force is doing.
Okay.
And I think there's even a way, I was just reading about this a few days ago, and I kind of want to explore this because I haven't done it yet, and I thought, why haven't I done this? But I think they will help you kind of lead discussions, in your community. So just a network to get connected to that I thought you guys would be interested in. So we already talked about some qualities that Rockefeller has come up with relative to community from their 100 Resilient Cities initiative. And these were the original characteristics that they had, and they've sort of kind of changed the lingo a little bit. But this is basically, it's the same thing. These are some qualities or characteristics that Rockefeller Research has found are characteristic of a resilient system. So awareness, diverse, self-regulating, integrated, and adaptive. And none of that makes any sense to me unless I look and see what they mean by all that. So the awareness part is definitely something that I'm hoping that we'll talk about here in just a few minutes. And we've already talked about it in terms of the STAR assessment. And it's looking at what are the strengths, what are the assets, what are your weaknesses, what are your vulnerabilities, and what are the risks to the community. So we'll talk here in just a second about some of the specific climate stressors that are anticipated for the Southeast, and it's slightly different for Northwest Arkansas as compared to the rest of the state. Mostly, trying to think. Mostly because we get even less rain in the summertime than the rest of the state, and that's predicted to continue. So then diverse, and that's not exactly what you might think it is, but it is too. Diversity is a part of that, but this is that having excess capacity. So this kind of goes back to social cohesion too. If you're not talking to each other, you may not realize that you do have excess capacity, and that means skill sets, assets in your community, people with chainsaws when there's an ice storm. That's just an example. So if you are not doing those assessments, going back to the first bullet, then you may not know that you do have excess capacity. Well, then you're not going to be able to use it. Or you may not have excess capacity, and it may be something that you need to start working on. Maybe you've only got one person in your neighborhood who can do blah blah, like clear trees. Well, what happens if something happens to that person? And the city can't get there because the roads are iced over, and it's that kind of thing. So you want to have redundancy, and then self-regulating, and that's that failing safely. Avoiding cascading disruptions. That's a complicated thing to build into a system, but it's basically, if you have the other qualities and they're working well, then whenever there is a major disruption or an extreme weather event, it's not going to be as disruptive as it could be if you don't have those other qualities. It's like, yes, you're going to have some shortcomings. There's going to be some struggles. Maybe some people in your community are not going to have balanced meals for a couple of days, but they're still going to have something to eat. Maybe there's an elder who has home health, and they normally get wound care every day, and they may skip a day, But it's not going to be that they sat there for a week and didn't get their wound care, So it has to do with severity. And then integrated, bringing together disparate thought cohesively and coordinating social issues. So if you're already a community that's bringing people together to have dialogue dinners, and talk about conflict that's occurring and how can we resolve it, how can we learn from each other, then you've definitely got a leg up on a community that's not having those kinds of discussions, and how can we have more of that? That's basically what that is. And then adaptive, which is kind of the whole deal that we're talking about. And everywhere I look, I mean, whether you're talking about at the local level or at the international level, flexibility is key because, before climate change, and since the Industrial Revolution, and since we became more urbanized as a species, we put policies into place at the local level, and then they've just kind of sat there and we followed them for years. But we can't do that anymore. We can't afford to think that we're just going to put policy in place and we're not going to have to revisit it for 25 years. Really, we're going to have to be changing things very quickly and at a pace that, we're not culturally accustomed to. And so that's one of the things that, we just have to kind of start getting our head around, is that the changes are going to be happening faster, and we may think that, wow, we've got that urban ag ordinance now, we're set. But the truth is, we're going to have to be constantly revisiting that and making sure that it's working at maybe a quicker pace than we did in the past, because it's going to be more critical that we're doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, too much.
So these are some of the Arkansas climate stressors, and this comes from the National Climate Assessment. It also comes from an organization called the Southern Climate Impact Planning Program, which is it's just a really cool thing that I don't fully understand yet. There's these organizations that NOAA is putting together, looking at different biomes and the specific climate stressors for them, and trying to ensure that communities know what those stressors are and how to prepare for them. And so, Southern Climate Impact Planning Program. What's kind of interesting about them is that if you look at the National Climate Assessment, the southeast kind of starts Arkansas, what's considered to be the southeast, and it goes east and down all the way to like Florida. But this organization is like Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, maybe part of Missouri. So it's like a different biome region. There is some overlay. But these are some of the Arkansas climate stressors, and some of these are generalized to the southeast, and some of these are specific to Arkansas. So increase in temperature, you got to think heat-related illnesses. And how are we going to prevent those?